Poland this evening. My name is Mark McMurrin. I'm the president and CEO of the Ginsburg Family Foundation, board member of the Holocaust Center, and for the Take Action Institute, the chair that is helping this initiative with an incredible student team, and so grateful for all of you that have chosen to join us this evening. I'm going to introduce some people to you, and we're going to have an engaging conversation about the challenges in Ukraine that are happening today. And a guest and a friend, Anton, I've known for many, many years. For those that may not know, my family has worked in Ukraine since 1993. My father was the conductor of the Kiev Symphony Orchestra and Chorus in Kiev for more than 20 years. So we've had a lot of deep relationships in that region, from citizens to government officials. And so, of course, the news of what has happened and transpired over these days, weeks, has been very difficult. And I think for all of us at different levels that we're experiencing, having friends in Ukraine or knowing the plight of those that are being persecuted and can relate to those issues and feeling for the Ukrainian people in this great time of need. So thank you for coming to listen and also to learn. You're also going to be able to ask questions. So I encourage you in the chat to be able to ask your question, and we'll facilitate that along the process as we move forward. For many of you who know some Ukrainian history and Dr. Fowler, I'm going to introduce her in just a minute, and we'll give us a lot more background. But the youth, the students of Ukraine have led three pivotal movements in its history, from independence in 1988 with the Granite Revolution to the Orange Revolution in 2004, when again Russia was trying to control the election, poisoned the principal freedom candidate, and forced a new election for freedom for Ukraine. And then the Maidan Revolution that happened in 2014, which then caused the surge to happen to annex Crimea, as Putin and people from the Kremlin felt that the grip of control they had on Ukraine and the people was slipping, and they started to move in by force, which has really led to a series of decades to where we are today. It's a tragedy of a country that is seeking freedom, independence in all forms, and a regime that wants to control them and to conquer them. And so I'm looking forward to this time to learning from Anton. He's been a young leader at the center of these revolutions, in the Orange Revolution as well as in Maidan, and has linked arms with many to stand for freedom, to stand for his people, to stand for Ukraine. And so we're looking forward to hearing from him directly today. So as we move, so that's what our program is going to be about today. We are recording this for those that are not able to be present, and assuming Anton is comfortable after the conversation, we'll release that to those so that others can also hear the story and understand firsthand what's happening. But let me introduce to you Dr. Mayhill Fowler. We're grateful and privileged to have an expert in this field right here in Central Florida. She is a historian, associate professor in the Department of History at Stetson University, where she also directs the programs in Russian, Eastern European, and Eurasian Studies. She holds a Ph.D. from Princeton University. She was the postdoctorate fellow at Harvard and the University of Toronto. My wife's from Toronto, so go Canada. She was a Fulbright Scholar in Ukraine from 2019 to 2022, and is affiliated researcher with the Center of Urban History in Lviv, and a member of the Scientific Society in New York. She's also written books. She is well known in this field. She has more expertise than we all could probably absorb today, but we're grateful for her to be able to give us some context and really shape an understanding of where Ukraine stands, the history behind its struggle, and the hope for its future. So please welcome Dr. Fowler.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you so much, everyone, for organizing this event and inviting me to speak to you today. I'm just going to try to share my screen here. Okay, screen share good? Okay. So thank you for having me here today. I was able to talk with one of my best friends in the world, my friend Sophia Diak, who runs the Center for Urban History in Lviv, Ukraine. Yesterday, we were able to get on Skype for the first time since the invasion started last week. And she said, you know, I'm glad people are finally learning where Ukraine is, right, and what it is. But she said, I'm so sad that all they see are tanks and blown up streets and people in military fatigues. She said, I wish they knew what was lost. And I wish they knew about my beautiful country. So I thought what I would tell you is a little bit about Ukraine. Ukraine has been a part of my life since 2005, when I wrote a paper in graduate school at Princeton on Ukrainian theater. Since then, 17 years ago, I've spent years researching in Ukraine, most recently on a Fulbright 2019 to 2020. I've seen hundreds of theater productions, read thousands of archival documents, and spent countless hours grappling with the very difficult Ukrainian language. But that is not what makes my heart stop when I see the Russian army bombing Ukraine. It's my friends. 17 years is a long time to know people. That's most of my adult life. So I wanted to show you some images of Ukraine, my Ukraine, so that you know something more than just what you see in the news. So I'm going to show you a lot of images. Some will touch you, some won't. That's okay, right? I just hope you get something out of this. You will learn more. You'll know more about Ukraine in 17 minutes than you do right now, I promise. Okay, hang on. So this is my first apartment in Kiev, the view from my first apartment in Kiev, where I went in 2006. Near Maidan, this is the square, the main square of Kiev, where revolution had happened in 2004 and would again happen in 2013 to 2014. Ukraine also means the beach at Odessa, and the beautiful 11th century cathedral, St. Sophia's, Sofisky Sobor in Kiev. That's actually where the literature and art archives are, so I spend a lot of time there. I've also been there in winter. This is with two of my friends, Ira and Nadia, in winter, before we went back to Nadia's apartment, and they taught me how to make kutya, a very rich New Year's dish for good luck. Both are scholars and activists. Both are currently still in Kiev. They taught me about theater, including the Brazil Theater, run by theater innovator Les Kurbas. Before last week, if you put theater Ukraine in Google, what you get is the Brazil Theater, run by Les Kurbas in the 1920s and 1930s. That was the topic of my dissertation. In 2009, Ira, Nadia, and I went to the Brazil Theater's archives in Kharkiv. Kharkiv, a city that you saw yesterday, bombed, assaulted by the Russian army. This is where Les Kurbas is from, in Western Ukraine, a beautiful village on a hill. And this is me celebrating at a jazzy book opening party on a Kiev rooftop in 2017, holding my book. Other friends also helped me understand Ukraine. Nothing's more Ukrainian than a summer music festival. Here I am with Natalia and Yosef. He's American, she's Ukrainian. She taught me how to make borscht. Here I am a few years later with her daughter. She and her now 2 kids crossed the border a few days ago into Romania. They're trying to get a flight from Bucharest back to the US, where Yosef is waiting for them. Kiev is beautiful. This is taken from the rooftop of a theater. I seem to have spent a lot of time in theaters and on rooftops. This is a mural in Kiev after Maidan, after the war started. The war started in 2014. The West is starting paying attention now, but the war started in 2014. Ukraine is also Lviv. Here's the university where I was affiliated. Here's my friend Ira's birthday party. Here are the students on my Fulbright, and at a summer school of Jewish culture. Ukraine is also Jews and Jewish culture. This is a public history project at the site of the Golden Rose Synagogue, the Zolota Rosa. You can see the stones there are meant to suggest Jewish matzevas, headstones. And on each stone is a quote from someone who is a native of this city, a Jewish native of this city, talking about this city. This synagogue was destroyed by Nazis and their local collaborators in the Holocaust. and now it's a site of contemplation. But Ukraine is not just Jews, Ukraine is also Muslims. This is a mosque, actually, outside Kherson, which apparently is now under Russian control. This is a mosque that is near what's called the ABL, the administrative borderline with Crimea. And in fact, a lot of Crimean Tatars come from Crimea, crossing the ABL to worship at this mosque because there was very little freedom of religion in Russia and certainly in occupied Crimea. But Ukraine is also culture. Ukraine is avant-garde theater. This is a theater production by Diki Teatr, Wild Theater, taking place in a zoo. Ukraine is very hipster, avant-garde art exhibits. It's hipster coffee shops. Ukraine has social justice projects. This is a project called Class Act that was about bringing children from Eastern Ukraine in the war zone to work with children from Western Ukraine and create theater pieces. Sorry. Ukraine is also the beautiful Dnipro River. Ukraine is Zaporizhia, site of a huge dam built in the Soviet period. This is actually the site of the largest Lenin statue, I think in the Soviet Union, but at least in Soviet Ukraine. It was taken down after 2014 in what's called Leninopad or Lenin Fall, when all the Lenin statues were taken down throughout Ukraine. And you can see here, people haven't quite decided what to do with it yet. Now, this is the beautiful river outside Kherson. This is an evening party in Lekhedzina, a village about 90 minutes away from Kiev. These old women preserved songs, local songs during the Soviet period, and here they're singing them. This was at a party hosted by my friend Andriy. Andriy has now joined the Ukrainian army. Ukraine is cats. Ukraine is my friend Sophia. You can see we have some gray hairs here. After all, we've known each other since 2006. And Ukraine is the beautiful Carpathian Mountains. May they see peace once again soon. So that's just a quick introduction to my Ukraine. Here's a bit of historical context. I'm a professor, so I could go on forever. So I will try to be brief and answer any questions you have in the Q&A. So this is about Ukraine. So back in the day, that is the 10th century day, the city Kiev, currently under attack, was the center of a polity called Kievan Rus, a loose confederation of princely states. And St. Sophia's Cathedral, which I showed you, where my archive is, right? That cathedral was built in the 11th century and was one of the gems of Kievan Rus. And you can see here, Kievan Rus was really big, right? You can see Kiev kind of in the middle, but it really goes from the Black Sea all the way up to Scandinavia. At this point, Russia was a swamp. It really didn't exist. Now, the Mongols invaded in the 13th century, and Kiev would not submit to the Mongols. So it was largely destroyed. At that time, the princes of a polity called Muscovy, which again was in a swamp and no one had heard of, worked with the Mongols, and Muscovy rose from the swamps to become the Russian Empire under Peter the Great in 1722. That's when Peter the Great says, we are an empire. So great, so trajectory of Russian history. That's cool. But different things were happening down in the south in former Kievan Rus. Actually, this region that is today Ukraine was then part of Poland. In fact, part of what was called the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And you might say, wait, Poland, Lithuania, wasn't Europe just like France? It was not. In the 16th to 18th centuries, say, Poland was actually a major player. Go back here. This is actually Kiev Mohyla Academy, one of the best universities in Ukraine. And actually back in the day was a very big site of learning in this period in Kiev. And some of these churchmen actually went from Kiev Mohyla Academy up to Peter the Great in Muscovy to share education and culture. But this university has been there for a long time. So what does this mean? It means that when we talk about Ukraine, we talk about a really different cultural influence than we had in Russia. This is Polish language, Polish influence, the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation, the creation of what's called the Greek Catholic Church, Orthodox, who then took the primacy of the Pope in Rome. People called Cossacks worked for the Ottoman Empire or the Poles working the borderlands, living as free bands of men. This was an incredibly diverse place. This was also where Jews lived in Eastern Europe. And often in the conflicts between Ukrainian peasants and Polish nobles, Jews were stuck in the middle. The Bogdan Khmelnytsky uprising in 1648, for example, when Cossacks fought Poles, is also remembered as a devastating period in Jewish history. In 1654, the Cossacks sided with the Tsar, thinking the Tsar would respect their autonomy. It was a mistake. The Tsar did not. The Ukrainian lands became divided. Partially, they were still under Poland, right? And partially part of the Russian Empire in what you could think of as like a rump state called the Hetmanate, with some privileges, until Catherine the Great fully brought the area under Russian imperial control. Catherine also partitioned Poland, bringing a huge Jewish, Polish, and Ukrainian population into the Russian Empire, making much of the population serfs. That might not be a concept that you know, but essentially depriving huge sections of the population of their freedom, causing religious warfare on the border between Greek Catholics, Orthodox, and Catholics, and Jews were often caught in the middle. But still, this is actually what one scholar calls the golden age of Jewish culture. Tons of small towns throughout this region where Jews, Poles, Ukrainians lived side by side, together and apart. In the 19th century, Ukrainian lands were part of the Vienna-ruled Habsburg Empire, pictured here in the blue, and the St. Petersburg-ruled Romanov or Russian Empire, pictured here in the pink. After the collapse of empires in World War I, there were many political projects, right? The Russian Revolution happened, revolution, civil war, really throughout this entire region. And there were really two political projects that emerged from this time. One, Poland, which became a state again after the Treaty of Versailles in 1918. And Soviet Ukraine, pictured here, which was one of the republics of the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Poland was democratic, but it became a military dictatorship in the 30s with increasing anti-Semitism, anti-Ukrainianism. The USSR, on the other hand, promoted Ukrainian and Jewish, among others, culture with state-sponsored theaters, books, and schools. It was here in Soviet Ukraine where you had an extraordinary outpouring of experimental art. These are some of the artists I love so much. On the right, you see Les Kurbas, theater innovator, and his very good friend on the left, playwright Mykola Kulish. They're part of this theater about which I wrote a book and about which I could speak way too much. However, Soviet Ukraine was also part of the Soviet Union and a dictatorship. One example and consequence of this is the Holodomor, the terror famine of 32-33, in which at least 4 million villagers in the region died of hunger because Stalin raised grain collection levels to bend the breadbasket of Europe to his will. Yet life continued until 1939, when Hitler and Stalin made a pact and invaded and divided Poland. So the USSR grabbed the eastern part of Poland and Hitler grabbed the western part. People there had the same decisions that people have had in Ukraine in the last few days. Do you flee? Do you stay? Ukraine was brutally occupied by the Nazis after Hitler invaded, breaking that pact in June 1941. I can just mention Babi Yar in Kiev, where 40,000 Jews were murdered on 2 days in September 1941. That site was bombed yesterday by the Russians. There were mass shootings at every town and village, Holocaust by bullets, as scholars say. Liberation began in 1943, but what state would rule these lands? Western Ukraine did not return to Poland, but became part of Soviet Ukraine because of agreements between the Allies at Yalta and Potsdam. From the city of Lviv, where I've spent so much time, only a handful of Jews survived, and Poles were deported after the war, and a brutal Sovietization campaign began. I've been thinking a lot about those survivors in these past few days, those people who thought this city would still be Poland, but it became part of the Soviet Union. I knew intellectually that was hard, but I think now I know more emotionally. In Ukraine, people have lost their country so many times. But in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed and there was independent Ukraine. Now, many of the USSR's nuclear weapons were in Ukraine. So the 1994 Budapest Memorandum urged Ukraine to denuclearize, and they agreed to give up their nukes in return for Russia, the US, and the Western powers recognizing their sovereignty and saying, okay, well, you've given up your nukes. So if anyone violates your territorial sovereignty, we will intervene. That has not happened. Now, it's a challenge to emerge from communism, to be sure. Suddenly there's a market. There's an attempt at rule of law. How do you set that up? There's no ideology. And there was a pro-Russian population in Ukraine, people who felt more belonging in the Soviet past than the Ukrainian present. But Ukraine voted, and fairly transparently. Democracy grew, there was a new parliament, new courts, et cetera, et cetera. Revolutions in Ukraine continued to push Ukraine on the path to democracy, including the Orange Revolution in 2004, when blatant disregard of votes brought people out to protest in favor of getting rid of pro-Russian serving President Viktor Yanukovych in favor of Viktor Yushchenko. Now, in 2010, votes were cast for Yanukovych, but at least they were cast in transparent democratic elections until 2013, when young students, just like you, got out to protest Yanukovych's statement that Ukraine would never join the EU. That led to Maidan, the revolution of dignity, until the ouster of Yanukovych in 2014. Ukraine had won. Then Putin took Crimea. Then two small regions broke away from Kiev with Russian support, both military and financial, and war began in 2014 in eastern Ukraine. War has not stopped since then. Until last week, the statistic was 14,000 lives were lost. Now, of course, Ukraine is on the edge. Here's some questions I get a lot. Are Ukrainians and Russians the same? No, the history is totally different. You have to understand that regions are different. History unfolds in different regions in different ways. Politics of these countries are completely different today. What about language? Don't Ukrainians speak Russian? Well, sure, it's not really a big deal. It's largely a bilingual country. And Ukrainian is a civic nationality, not an ethnic nationality. In the United States, we're all from a bunch of different places, right? But we still follow a constitution, rule of law, sense of a kind of governance of our country. Ukraine is a place of freedom, unlike Russia today, sadly. Ukraine is a place that was free, that was building good institutions, good governance, a market-based culture. You could express yourself, you could protest, you could live your life without state oppression. Just a normal country until Russia invaded last week. I hope you know a bit more about Ukraine. I can speak about anything you want. This is the biggest land war since World War II, and the moment demands the best from us all. May Ukraine prevail. May peace prevail. Дякую за увагу. Thank you for your attention.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Fowler. And by the way, we're going to transition here in a second. I'm going to introduce Anton, but if you would, definitely go ahead and start in the chat section. If you have a question for Dr. Fowler, I'm going to get us started here with Anton in just a minute, and you can ask him a question. So we'll kind of work that through. We'll see what questions pop up, and we'll try to overlap some. Mark, I saw you just popped on. Did you want to add anything? Okay. So first of all, wow, thank you so much. I mean, Dr. Fowler, just it's not just your knowledge, it's your heart. And even interacting with you before we got on this call, I could sense, I think, what some of us all feel, which is there's some emotion and tears kind of holding back. If you let it get a little too close, it's difficult to keep talking. And so thank you for sharing your heart and making it informative, but certainly sharing your passion for this amazing country. And Anton, I could see you smiling constantly as she showed picture after picture. I could just see, and I want to get your thoughts in a second on just what you thought about seeing some of those pictures of the beautiful country. I am honored to introduce to you what I consider not just a good friend, but a brother. Anton, I've been able to see firsthand, like Mark, the extraordinary work that he and his colleagues have done, not just in Kyiv, but throughout the country. You might have had a chance to see a little bit about him in the flyer. Anton's 33 years old, which is extraordinary in that it means he was born in 1988. Just 3 years before the dissolution of the Soviet Union, which is an incredible, he's one of the last generation to have been born in that era. And Anton's a youth leader who organizes service projects to help serve some of the most vulnerable in his community, places like orphanages and prisons, helping widows, taking essential items like blankets and medicine and food and generators to the front lines in the eastern part of Ukraine, even before the invasion took place at great risk, convoys of vans that he and his colleagues would organize to take some essential items out there. And I would describe Anton as a great thinker, a strategist with a deeply compassionate heart. This past Monday, he and others were organizing items to take to people who were out of food, who were in bunkers, who were stuck inside their homes, who either had chosen not to flee Kyiv or were unable to. And so just so amazed at just the way that you're stepping in, you and your family and others there. And I can't wait to have Anton visit Orlando and maybe have him at the next Take Action conference, Mark. Maybe that we can pull that off for 2024. Or is it 23? 23. So Anton, before I ask you this question, I just want to say on behalf of the Holocaust Center and the Take Action Institute and Global Unites, we're so honored that you would spend this time with us. And I just want to begin with two questions, and then I'll kind of watch the chat section there, and we'll pull questions out from there pretty quickly. But first of all, would you just describe, well, first of all, let's just back up. Tell us what you were feeling as you saw some of those pictures that Dr. Fowler put together and you were smiling. What comes to mind?
I definitely know that she knows what she's talking about. Like every picture, I understand that she knows what she's talking about. And she had read Ales Kurbas, and she knows, yes. So that's why I'm smiling. And also I'm smiling because it's I see pictures and I see like, this is my country. And now when now Kyiv is different. And when you go to Maidan, it's so different. And Kyiv, like during this week, now it's different country, different city, and probably different me. Yeah.
Well said, Anton. Anton, would you just for those of us who were reading news and as I said to you the other day, I mean, we're paying attention all the time to what's happening, but would you describe what it's like to be there in Kyiv? What is, and I know it changes from day to day, but what's 24 hours look like for you right now? I know you're going on very little sleep. Describe what it's like right now for you.
Today is day number 7. I lost the count of days, actually. Yeah, we had messages yesterday, and I lost the count of days because I don't, like, yesterday I saw that it's Wednesday, and first 2 nights I didn't sleep. First 3 days I didn't sleep. First 4 days I didn't go to shower, not because because everything changed in a second. We wake up at 5 o'clock because above our house we had a cruise missile, and I went out and I saw cruise missile, and the same second understood it started. It started. And now everything will be different. How it's look like I'm from Kyiv. Can you imagine, one of the biggest cities in East Europe, 5 million people, 5 million people with suburbs. And during 30 hours, 2.5 million, probably now 3 million people has left city. We have Mark, remember, we have a lot of bridges, and we have Dnipro River and 2 banks of river. And now all bridges are closed, and there is just one bridge that we can use. And we cannot go to hipster coffee shop anymore because there are no hipster coffee shop. But what you definitely feel here is a huge spirit of resistance. I appreciate what the professor said, and we cannot understand what's going on here without understanding a narrative, because this is just a part of bigger story and bigger picture. And this is without understanding at least the last 100 years what happened here, you would not understand why Ukrainians are fighting so hard. Why they are fighting for last soldier and last bullet. If you would read, it will like puzzle to, and you'll put this picture together and understand what, like, yeah, sorry, I can talk too much. Just Sean, interrupt
No,
me and ask questions.
So thank you so much, Anton. Again, those students who you have access, I know some people on their phones, or maybe you're listening to this while you're driving, but feel free to drop a question there, and Lua and I are paying attention to those questions as they come in. And I see some people asking for resources. We'll definitely get that, and we'll come back to that in just a little bit. One thing that I was thinking about, Anton, was on Monday when the pressure felt a little less intense, and I know that's a very general statement under the circumstances, but describe what it was like when you all began to organize some of the essential items and take them out to some of the people. Describe how you organized that, and describe what you saw when you went and saw those people face to face.
You're talking about evacuation, like last week, or?
Well, I was thinking more so, the weekend was very, very tense because it was just so unknown. And I know it's still that way now, but then on Monday or Tuesday, or maybe it was Sunday, I'm trying to remember. I've lost track of days as well.
On Monday,
it was Monday, yeah.
We, all of us, we had a feeling that war is coming. All of us. I went to bed with a bad feeling on my heart that tomorrow morning will be different, and all of us, we had the same. So you can feel it in air, silence, and you can feel that, like, very, like, I don't know how to explain it in English. I have like words, but I hope you understand. So when everything started in Kyiv was completely collapsed, traffic, because during one day 2 million people left the city, and I start to evacuate. I gave my car to my friend, my bus, to evacuate families of military guys, because if something will happen with Kyiv, that would be risk for families of military. And it's hard to, like, the first 2 days you have shock, and it's hard to start to do something. You have shock, and you cannot accept this, that it's reality. You cannot be ready for a war. You're never ready. And on third day, it was very hard to do something because the battles were inside of Kyiv, in Abalone, in even in my district, in my area. So, and just on day number 4, we start actively work, but the problem was we have no gasoline here in Kyiv at all, and we understood that we need to think strategically. So we create a logistics center with guys who are evacuated in West Ukraine. They are in charge of managing things, and we created like a group of 15 cars that are driving all around Kyiv. We pick up all people that need evacuation. We bring them to our office. There they have meal and some tea, hot tea. Twice per day we have buses that, like shuttles, they drive them to our summer camp base 200 kilometers on south. And today we evacuated more than 150 people. Tomorrow we will evacuate 200 people, but it's very hard to do because in Kyiv there are a lot of block posts and just one bridge. and lack of and lack of gasoline.
Mhm.
And like, you know, so many small issues that you need to solve. And when you have million news and it's like bombing your head and you cannot think clear enough, it's very hard. And when you feel panic in air, it's very hard to think strategically. But I think now we have this logistics center, and now we will every day we will evacuate approximately 150 people. But other problems that we have, Kyiv is almost surrounded. We don't have a stable supply for Kyiv. And if you would go to grocery store, you would see that grocery store is empty. Probably in 2 or 3 days, we will have problems with food. And like last 24 hours, we are working with we try to find funds, we try to find trucks, we try to find farmers that can give us product we can buy, and we can bring it here, and we can organize a team or committees that will be in charge of distribution, and it should be very strategic. And we understand that the problem in Kharkiv or in Sumy or in Chernihiv is even worse than here. So we need to think about them also. So it's like the hardest is to, like, there are million small problems and there are big strategic problems, and you need to separate it. If you will solve always small problems, you would never think about big problems. So the hardest is when it's like collapse and everything is to try to stop and think about big problems.
Anton, what a great word and message for all of us on this call. You know, there are opportunities to take action all around us. And sometimes it can feel overwhelming in our own communities when there's an issue that seems so big that we sort of just allow ourselves to be paralyzed and not do anything, but to just break it down into how can I help? How can I take the right step right now to help in this situation? That's really, really powerful. There is a question here. Somebody that you know actually who's visited you there, Olivia Blase.
Yeah. Whoa.
She's on here and she's asking, are there any specific groups of people who are hesitant to evacuate?
Like us.
Yeah, I mean that you guys
Yeah.
are a category for sure. Describe the decision that you all made as a family. We were talking earlier, the millions who have left and gotten out of Kyiv, and you all made the decision to stay. How did that go as a family talk? Like, what was that conversation like?
Do you really want to know? It was hard conversation because
Yeah.
we still, like, if everything will start, okay, situation can be changed really rapidly, and the situation is unstable. In such kind of situation, you need to react very fast. This direction where I live is one of Russian priorities, and it means that if battle will come on this side, the plan is we will send our family. They have cars and they will drive. I want to stay here, maybe in office or maybe here. I don't know yet, but that's like sounds like a plan. Yeah, categories of people.
Yeah, so there's people who've chosen to stay, which is, you know, like your family. We also hear reports of men, dads, husbands who have helped evacuate their families and they've returned back to the city.
Yeah, I think everyone who stay here now understand that he should be a part of resistance. If you are not a part of resistance movement, there is no sense of being here.
Mm.
That's how I like see
Yeah.
situation. If you're ready to, like, it's risk. If you're ready to be part of solving all these problems of new reality, you can stay. If you want to go and maybe you just see yourself in different kind of resisting, you like, nobody say bad about those who evacuated. Like we understand it's okay, it's normal. Like we are not better than those who went there. Maybe there will be more effective there. Yeah. So.
Mm. Also, you know, one of the things that has been such a powerful display of leadership as we've been watching all over the world is President Zelensky. And, you know, I mean, just what an incredible, you know, it's one thing to say something, it's another to stay and mean what you say. You know, when he made that statement, when you attack us, you will see our faces, not our backs.
I need
That's a
ammo.
hard statement.
I need ammo, not to write. Yeah, phrases like that. Yeah.
Yeah, those are heavy statements because it paints a picture of a reality that's, you know, even as I say it, it's hard to say out loud because it's a very humbling, troubling. It's a deep statement.
Let me say, Zelensky, it's not hero. He can say this because he's got nation. Without this nation, such kind of nation, he wouldn't be able to say these phrases. But because he can lean on these people, he can say it, proclaim it.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm not a fan of Zelensky, but I really start to respect him really after this week. I was mostly like in opposition to him, but now I see that he's really risking and he's really fighting. And now I say he's my president. It doesn't matter what, like, we support him. And yeah, it's interesting because he's an actor. He's like Reagan. Yeah, Reagan was actor probably. Yeah. It's interesting parallels. Reagan made a lot. Zelensky made a lot. He's a part of big story. I think that he is not ordinary politic. He is like outside of that world. And at first, all Western politics look at him and said, "You a stranger, what are you doing? You don't know how to speak right. You don't know how to write your thesis and how to give your speech. Like you're different. You're not one of us." But when war started and when they saw him in action, that was like a shock for most Western politics. And maybe because he's so different and he's got like a from different paradigm, he become a part of, like, in the middle of attention of whole world. Yeah, so it's paradox. It's interesting. Yeah,
it is interesting. And Dr. Fowler, I have a question that I'll ask Anton, and I'd like to come and have you comment on it too because of your experience there. Mark, you as well. What is it, Anton, about the Ukrainian spirit that the strength, you know, and I think, Dr. Fowler, you could probably speak to some of the history there that is in the DNA, but what is it that makes Ukrainians just so bold and strong in the face of such opposition right now? Dr. Fowler, do you want to comment on that, or?
Sure. I mean, I can say, I think most people living in what is today Ukraine have been struggling for a long time and know how to do it. The country has been at war since 2014, right? So people in Ukraine have been kind of fighting the Russians since 2014, right? Ideas of sort of there's something going on and we need to help people. So kind of getting stuff to the front lines, kind of thinking about the country in a patriotic way. I mean, territory was taken from them in 2014, right? So this is not something that just happened, right? So some of those ideas of fighting someone, logistics and stuff like that are already in place. And I would say you can take that way back, right? I mean, you can think about the Soviet period, right? When there was so much oppression against Ukrainians. You can think about the Russian Empire when the Ukrainian language was prohibited, right? You can even think about, as I said, right, the 18th century under Catherine the Great, right, when she got rid of the hetmanate. I mean, is there a DNA connection between all these people? Absolutely not. But there is a sense of we've been fighting for a long time, right? And there is a sense of kind of the ability to do that. And so I think the world is surprised. That's great. I think those of us who study Ukraine aren't surprised, right? We love our friends and we're just, of course, my friend Sophia didn't leave and she's organizing testimony and recording stories and getting everybody to Poland. Like, of course she's doing that, right? Of course, Bogdan joined the army, right? Of course, Andrei joined the army, right? Of course, the theater, the Les Kurbas theater in Lviv is a shelter. Like, of course, these other theater people are giving food in the train. Like, of course they are. So it's a surprise maybe to the Western world, but not a surprise to those of us who study this place, which is fought for so long for its freedom.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And if, according to Timothy Snyder and Bloody Land, he mentions that there is no other place more bloody place in the world than Ukraine. It's mean like during last centuries, that was a terrible century. First World War, Second World War, fight for independence, Soviet repression, genocide of Ukrainians. It's like bloody.
Anton, you muted. Sorry.
Yeah,
you accidentally muted. Okay.
But that created unique personalities and unique character. Character of people that are ready to fight, character of people that are ready to make sacrifice, and that can clearly understand that there is something bigger than just their own life. And that's what very hard to understand for individualistic Western people, that how, like, I am in the center of everything and whole world is circling around me and my success, my money, my everything I am. But here, brains are working differently. There is something bigger than me and I. And when you understand it, you are able to fight and you are able to sacrifice. So yes, we want to become a part of Europe, but we understand that we are different from Europeans, because this way of thinking, it's not very Western way of thinking. Yeah.
That's really well said. Thank you to both of you. I've got a couple questions coming in here. Anton, what role have youth played in past revolutions, and what role are youth playing in the current resistance?
Small. I'm just one brick in the wall. I just do what I can with what I have every day. When I came to territorial defense, they asked me, do you know how to shoot? I said, no. Maybe do you know tactic? No. You are a bad soldier. You're not better. Like, do something. We need someone who know. I don't know how to shoot. Of course, but it's everyone finds their place. If you are able to look around, you will see opportunities and you'll see what you can do, but try to be able to look. And what I'm like, what is unique here for me fantastic. I really can see God's hand in everything, how God connect everything, different people, different, and it's so organically, so naturally, how everything start to work naturally. There are no strategy, no, but it's like organically, machines start to work, all connections come together. And I look at this and I don't understand how, but just everyone is observing and okay, I can do this and I can do this. Let's do it together. Let's connect this and this. And it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Anton, again, you're putting your finger on what's so powerful, though, is it's the small actions. I think that's the phrase that you said, and you've got, an exponential, many small actions that are adding up to a big action.
John, can I ask
Yes,
one
yes,
question and follow up?
please do.
And related to Mackenzie's question, from Maidan revolution in 2013 started with a small group of youth in Independence Square that moved to hundreds to tens of thousands, inspiring a nation to stand up for its freedom and a president who was aligning themselves with Russia. And you were in the midst of that. So I'd like to hear from you how you feel from that. And if those have never seen the Netflix movie, I think it's Winter on Fire, is a great reference to understand that movement. It's very well documentary about the challenge and a peaceful activism of youth and then its citizens that ended up in violence because of the government shooting at those protesters and them having to defend themselves. So in that, it started with peace and it moved to violence from the other side. And now you, as the youth of the country, are faced with violence and a place to stand for freedom. How do you see those parallels related to the youth movements in Ukraine from Maidan that has continued to today?
It's an interesting question, Mark. It's hard to give short answer, but I can definitely see that. Look, 1991 revolution on granite, 10 years or 11 years, new revolution, 11 years, new revolution, 11 years, war. So I can definitely see that generation. It's I need to process it. I need to think more, but I can see logic, but I don't clearly understand how it works. But I see that it works, and I really see parallel between revolution of dignity and war. Because I was on there was one night on a revolution on dignity, like when we were surrounded and there was no chances, like logically there was no chances to win, just like bunch of idiots trying to and police around it and dictator all money of like oligarchs and what are you doing? Are you stupid? But I don't know how it happened. In one night, and all of them run away. And now I have same feeling here. We are surrounded from three sides, and like same picture, but on a bigger scale. And logically, like, what are you doing? Okay. And that's what Europeans or Western people, they think, like, there are no sense of fighting. If you try to analyze, look logically and find arguments and try to evaluate what is better to do, no sense. But what Ukrainians are doing, let's make Molotov cocktail, and then we will see. Like, let's make one more day, and then one more day, and then probably one more day, and then we will see.
Wow.
Well,
Lua,
Anton,
I think we have, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mark.
that from the tires on fire, the circle, the barricades of Independence Square surrounded. I mean, I didn't think about it until you just said it, to the convoy that has come to surround Kiev. It's the same fight, different. Obviously, it is different. I'm not trying, it's different, but the language and the challenge, and you've been there, right, to stand for your freedom, and the hope that you have that will turn like it did then.
At least for next generation. Maybe if not for our, at least for next generation. Yeah. And it's
There's hope there.
There is hope.
Go ahead, Sean. I'm sorry for jumping in.
Well, I just wanted to know, you're good, Mark. I just wanted to check, Lou, we have about 5 more minutes. Okay. Anton, I think this is a good question here that somebody's posed. By the way, all these are so good, and we'll figure out a way to create a document with some responses to these. Some of the questions are related to resources. Lua, Mark, Anton, Dr. Fowler, and I were talking before, and we'll make sure that we get.
We can recommend some books for you, really, I think.
Yeah. And people are obviously asking about how they can give. And we agreed that for today, we really wanted the focus to be on what we could receive from Dr. Fowler's time and Anton's time. We will include also ways that we would recommend those that want to give as well. But I think, Anton, this is a big question. But just, you speak from your heart. You're not speaking for Ukraine necessarily. You're just speaking as Anton. What would you like to see from the international community? Is there something you guys wish would happen?
Of course, we have expectations, but we will fight. Doesn't matter what international partners would help us or would not help us. Anyway, we will fight. So the main expectation is to have a we call it to close sky. It's mean NATO or US or French or German airplanes will patrol over Ukrainian sky, and they will shot and hit at least all rockets. We don't expect them to shoot airplanes, but at least rockets, because we don't have a lot of airplanes and we cannot do it. And that's what like Russians use. They destroy our cities. They completely destroy Kharkov, all central. There is a main square of, we call it Square of Freedom. It's so interesting, Square of Freedom. And they shoot into all city administration, police officer, biggest university on a Square of Freedom. It's
illogical.
Yeah.
Well, I think some people are asking, and I'm so grateful for this platform that can answer some questions, maybe create some others that will help us all research more on our own. And after Anton and I were speaking this morning, and it's a complicated ask. The airspace is very complicated. It's where wars escalate very quickly, and so
we know that probably it would be no.
No, but I'm agreeing with you that it's needed, and no one can really figure out how to achieve it. I think for all of us on this, whatever faith background you have, if you pray, that's one thing that we of all faiths can be praying for is clear skies, because it is significantly
I
damaging.
know, like, I know what is needed for Western people to close sky, but I don't like this answer.
Mhm.
They need Russian rocket to fall on a building full of people. And if 700 people will die from one rocket, West will sit and make decision, oh, now is the time. But not to, like, that's how West work, not preventing, but
Mhm.
after. And what we are like saying to Western people, like during the last 8 years, that's not the way how aggressor is thinking. Like, if you really, like, because if you think this way, you just motivate him to do it. Like, you're stimulating him to go further. You need to, like, work differently with them. Yeah. Equal answer.
Yeah.
Equal, not
Equal.
wait.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Well, Anton, I think it's 1 a.m. for you, I believe. So it's way past your bed hour. Your coffee is probably worn off a little bit by now, but I'm going to hand this back over to Lua, but just want to say thank you so much for sharing your heart, and we love you. We're standing with you, and that's not just in thoughts, but we will organize and figure out ways that we can practically help as well. And so Lua, if you want to take us from there.
I just want to thank you for being with us and consulting with us this week in advance. It's such a gift for people to hear the experience. And I know you're so busy trying to do all the logistics. And I hope you also get to sleep a little bit. But I'm so grateful for everyone who came. We will post the video tomorrow, as well as some resources of what you can do next, and things that you can read and how you can educate yourself. Please share that video with other people. And we just wanted to, I posted in the chat how you can follow us on social media so you can see the posts and our other programs. I'm wondering, today Anton said that, if people didn't pray before, they're praying now in Kiev. So I wonder, Anton, if you would be willing to close us with a brief prayer.
To be honest, it's very hard for me to pray last day after I will pray, but after what happened in Kharkov, it's hard. But I will, yeah.
Anton,
Yeah.
thank you, Lua, for suggesting that. And would you pray in Ukrainian, please? It's okay that we don't understand. Would you pray in Ukraine? Pray from your language.
At least one person here will understand.
Dr. Fowler will understand.
And she can translate for you. О, Господь, я не знаю, що відбувається, і у тебе все під контролем. Ти все бачиш, ти все знаєш. І ти є праведний суддя, суддя усім, хто робить лихо і хто робить зло. Господь, я прошу, аби ти був суддею, Господь, я прошу, аби ти зупинив це зло. Я прошу, аби ми бачили твою руку тут. Господь, потребуємо тебе. Каємось, Господь. Бо ми є теж злі, і в нас багато зла. І на тебе надію ми маємо. Спаси нас, Господь. Врятуй. Бо ми є слабкі. Амінь.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And thank you to Dr. Fowler for sharing your research. And thank you for Anton for sharing your heart and your story. All of us can commit to please keep Anton and his family and all of Ukraine in your prayers. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for talking about Ukraine. Yeah. And maybe Professor will recommend a few books for you to read if you would like to research.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Goodbye.
Lou, I know we're wrapped up. Thank you so much for organizing and pulling this off so quickly. It was a lot in a short amount of time, and
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mayhill.
Yeah,
Thank you.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. I hope that we can be in touch about further resources and what we can do to continue to help Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm hoping to send this out tomorrow. So Mayhill, if you have just a short list, that would be awesome. If you could
Sure.
email it to me, I'll include it
will.
in the recording that I post.
Perfect.
And then when I post the recording, I'll send it to you all as well, so you can share however you'd like.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.